Hi everyone, and welcome to today's last Night Talent Branding webinar series. Today we're going to be talking about a particularly hot topic this year, building a remote culture to retain your talent. So just before we get started, I wanted to let you know that the session is being recorded, so you don't need to be taking notes along the way. And if you do want to ask any questions, please do add these to the Q&A and we'll aim to answer as many as we can at the end. So today we're really excited to have Andy, who's our senior people partner here at Talentful, as our guest speaker. So Andy has a vast knowledge in all things culture and has done a really great job this year in helping our organisation to shift to remote working culture. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Andy to introduce himself.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Hi, everyone. I'm Andy. I'm the senior people partner at Talentful, obviously, and I look after everything HR, from employee engagement to management support to obviously company culture and beyond. I've worked in HR now for about 10 years, mostly in standalone HR positions within quickly scaling SMEs across both the US and the UK. And to date, I've worked with leaders in the tech, media, arts and entertainment, hospitality, and public sectors to help uncover big people-related solutions and help raise the level of professionalism as they continue to scale their organizations. Really excited to be invited today to speak with Kelly and Vilu about this topic. And now I'll hand it over to Vilu next for her introduction.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andy. Hi, everyone. My name is Vilu, and I'm one of the talent directors here at Talentful, looking after a portfolio of clients and a team of recruiters. I've been in talent acquisition for nearly 7 years now, and most of my experience have been working with startups and scaling businesses across the UK and Europe. I started my career as a pretty hands-on recruiter, but for the past 2.5 years, I've actually been working as a senior advisor to C-suite and founders on talent acquisition best practices and hiring strategies.
Great, thank you. So just to introduce myself, so I'm Kelly, I'm the head of talent branding here at Talentful. So I'm working with a number of really exciting global tech organizations in supporting them to improve their talent brand. So through data and insight, I really help our clients to gain a solid understanding of how their brand is perceived in the market and also provide creative solutions to get them noticed. So prior to working in a branding capacity, I was actually a tech recruiter previously. So I've worked with some really great e-commerce brands like Matches Fashion, Not on the High Street, and Net-a-Porter.
Fantastic, thank you, Kelly. And now let me give you a brief introduction to Talentful, because we might be new to some of you. So Talentful is a global in-house talent consultancy, and we are actually on a mission to accelerate the growth of our clients through a very unique embedded talent acquisition model. We are a global company now of more than 100 recruiters that are based in London, Berlin, San Francisco, and actually most recently, Austin and Boston. We work with a range of businesses through seed stage to scale ups and all the way through to household names such as like Google and King. Our sweet spot really is building businesses through end-to-end recruitment delivery, but most recently, we've actually just launched a new talent brand services.
Right, so what are we going to be covering today? I'm just going to quickly talk you through this. So first of all, we'll be talking through some key tactics of how to build a remote culture. We'll then be talking through engaging with new joiners, so the importance of getting the onboarding experience right. Next will be how to embrace your values in a post-COVID world. So Andy's going to take us through some tangible examples you can go away and really implement in your own businesses. And then finally, we'll talk through some ideas to boost employee engagement working remotely.
Great, so let me just get started. So building a company culture is not an easy task, as we all know. It takes time to cultivate and it involves hiring the right people. Most of the times, a company culture is actually shaped in the office without much effort, which clearly isn't the case anymore as we all work remotely. So even though remote working and remote teams were already a common practice, it wasn't until recently that companies were forced to work beyond their office walls. There's certainly a number of challenges associated with remote working and culture building. So let's have a brief look at some of the most common ones. Probably the biggest challenge is the lack of social interaction. So employees no longer have the opportunity to meet their peers and managers in the office. All communication now is virtual. This really goes hand in hand with challenges around keeping the morale up. Employee engagement is actually really easy to suffer when employees feel removed from the bigger picture and the company's mission. Another significant challenge, in my opinion, is that in a remote world, we can no longer rely on being in the same place at the same time to collaborate. And finally, ensuring our employees have a healthy work-life balance is a lot more challenging now, with most of us working from our own living rooms or bedrooms. And this really brings me to another interesting challenge, which is building trust with our employees. So where shall we start remote culture building, you ask? As always, my advice would be to start with the basics. Remember, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You might have some really great things already in place, like your values, which you can use as building blocks. So when building a remote culture, I believe technology is an absolute necessity. We really need to ensure we have the right kind of tech available to create opportunities for collaboration and remote teamwork. There's actually a lot to choose from. So there's Slack, there's Zoom, there's Hangouts, and there's my absolute favorite for async communication, which is Loom. Creating a sense of togetherness is also key in my opinion. So people need to feel a sense of belonging when they're remote. Some people might feel really isolated without the informal office chatter. So you should really encourage your employees to engage with each other by setting up non-work discussions. Slack or Hangouts could work really well. So you can actually use these channels to set up virtual coffee meetings or like weekly challenges for your teams. The rule of thumb, in my opinion, is to be as creative as you can. You shouldn't feel ashamed of looking for inspiration somewhere else. There are some fantastic organizations who have already been working remotely, so the likes of Automatic and GitLab, who you can always turn to for some inspiration. Using your company values as building blocks is super important in my opinion too. Here, I think what you should really think about is how to translate your values into the remote world. And lastly, I would encourage everyone to lean on your managers to keep the teams together. Leaders in your business have a very crucial role to play in fueling positive culture, which will contribute to strengthening your talent brand.
Great, thanks, Vilo. So before we move into our next topic, we're going to run a pop quiz just to highlight why onboarding is such an important step in your employee journey. So I'll give you a few seconds at each of these questions to think about the answer, and then we'll do a bit of a... Right, so starting with our first question, so what percentage of employees aren't fully committed to a new company in the first 6 months? I'll give you a few seconds to think about that. Right, so unbelievably, this is 87%. So this tells us that companies have a lot of work to do to really ensure that their new joiners get a brilliant experience when they are onboarded. And this is a big and very important part of anybody's employee journey, even more so now where normal human interaction and the quick question over a desk isn't quite possible. So depending on the experience that your new joiner has, can really have a knock-on effect to their performance, their engagement, and ultimately your talent brand. So I think we all are aware that bad experiences can also lead to bad reviews. So our second question is, what percentage of hires are unlikely to recommend an employer after their onboarding experience? So again, I'll just give you a few seconds to think about that. So the answer here is 20%. So Digitat recently reported that 1 in 5 new hires are unlikely to recommend an employer to a friend or family member after their new hire onboarding experience. And this is all down to poor experience and their perception of this company's talent brand changing. So employer referrals are one of the most popular sources of hire because they are often given by trusted brand ambassadors in the business who are really loyal to the brand and are generally high performers. In addition, they positively impact cost and time to hire, and research also shows they tend to stay longer in organizations. So if this part of your onboarding isn't done right, there's a significant impact to that. And our final question is, great onboarding can improve employee retention by how much %? So again, I'll just give you a few seconds to have a think about that. Right, so research by Glassdoor found that organizations with a strong onboarding process improved new hire retention by 82% and productivity by over 70%. This is both of them are really big numbers and can have a big positive impact on companies' bottom line and company morale overall. Right, so let's continue the conversation by going into the process of engaging with new joiners. So new hire onboarding is a leading HR priority in organizations that really want to reduce turnover and provide a culture building employee experience. But in response to the COVID pandemic, many companies have had to relocate their sourcing, their hiring and onboarding practices to be completely online, which really rewrites the rules for success. But fortunately, with just a little bit of adjustment, you can still use your onboarding process to put employees first and set new hires up quickly. Right, so pre-onboarding is a huge part of your candidate and employee experience, and ironically, it also seems to be the most forgotten stage for many organizations. So often a candidate accepts a role, they sign the contract, everyone's really thrilled that they're joining, and then they don't hear anything until day one. So if your new hire has been neglected, and they will end up feeling undervalued, and the perception of your brand could be negatively impacted. So make sure that you're setting your new joiners up for success, and there's plenty that can be done ahead of your new joiner starting. So first of all, ownership and responsibility sits with your managers. So pre-onboarding should not be seen as an HR thing. It should be a joint effort. So this stage is a great opportunity for your hiring managers to have ownership and accountability for communication with their new joiner to start building up their relationship. So consider your responsibility in this, maybe building a manager's new starter guide with really ideas and a timeline of when to reach out to their new joiners to ensure that the momentum is maintained before they start on day one. Next is virtual coffees or a team lunch. So getting your new starter meeting the team ahead of day one is a really great way to help them and your team start to build rapport. And in our virtual world, this is made even easier that you don't have to think about location logistics. So if the time is available, perhaps your new joiner could be doing one-on-one coffees with everybody in the team individually, and then do a collective team lunch just before they start. So all of this activity will make them feel included and supported ahead of joining. The next idea is a new starter pack. So you shouldn't be putting them to work obviously before they've started their new role, but maybe it's worth thinking about the information that you can share with your new joiner that can really set them up for success ahead of time. So this could be things like org structures, key information about projects that they'll be involved in, and any sort of culture specific things like ways of working and values, etc. All of this information will really help them ahead of their first day in their job. The next one is surprise and delight. So think about what your new joiner may typically receive on day one of joining. So if they were obviously coming into the office, and don't let this surprise and delight element slip down that we're all working remotely. Make sure that these things, the things that they were naturally going to receive on day one, whether that be a branded notebook or maybe they'll get a branded mug or t-shirt, anything like that, that they're all sent in the post to your new joiner, because they'll really appreciate anything that helps them embed into a normal first day and makes them feel part of the organization. And finally, all hands or social events. So maybe something to consider is inviting your new joiner to one or two all hands or company-wide meetings to get them really familiar with other people and the environment, how you do things really. So if you're already doing any remote socials, so maybe you're doing some pub quizzes or team hangouts, and there's certainly nothing in the rule book that says that you can't invite your new joiner along to meet the team in advance. So all of this effort will really result in a more engaged new joiner who will organically go on to tell others of their great experience and spread the word of your organization. And they're also more likely to refer others to your organization too.
Great. And thanks, Kelly. So now I'd like to move on chronologically forward to discuss the actual onboarding period. I think from a talent retention perspective, it's vital to plan exactly what you're going to do during the onboarding period, especially while remote, and do it well. Make sure you show your new starter from the outset what an organized, inclusive, and caring company you are, whilst keeping your processes simple, streamlined, and efficient. The first and most important thing, and it sounds actually ridiculous to say, but you'd be surprised how many companies fail at this. Be prepared. Imagine it's your first day of work and you don't have any computer equipment, any logins, and there's literally nobody there to help you. What a waste of time and what a horrible experience that is. You should be preparing for your new starter as soon as you've signed their employment contract. And that includes IT setup, points of contact, systems access, adding them to any company-wide comms channels, onboarding plans, docs, and materials. If you're a larger company with multiple new starters and you can onboard people on the same day in groups, do that. And Kelly's just talked about engaging with your new starters during the pre-onboarding process. If you want to really impress them, send them their onboarding plan even before their first day so that they already know what to expect and can plan ahead. If you have the tech capabilities, consider pre-recording a welcome video for your new starters so that they get more familiar quickly with their teams, the leadership, and their surroundings. On the new starter's first day, make sure everyone company-wide knows that your new starter has arrived so that they can feel properly welcomed into the fold. Here at Talentful, we use a three-pronged approach. We do a shout out with the new starter's photo on HiBob, which is our HRIS, and this shows up on everybody's homepage and automatically sends everyone an email as well. We also share some fun facts about the new starter in a monthly People Team newsletter. And also, one of our CEOs announces them again at our monthly all-hands meeting. Now, Kelly had discussed giving ownership and accountability to managers during the pre-onboarding process. I definitely echo this, and it's so important for managers and any teams that your new starter is a part of to continue to check in with them regularly. It can be a quick video call or even an email or Slack message just to check if they need any help. But make sure they're added to relevant comms channels and groups so that they've been given a breakdown of any opportunities to socialize informally and meet or mingle with the team. Bringing someone into your company culture is a company-wide task and shouldn't be left just to HR. HR, however, should be properly training managers and giving them the relevant support to manage their teams remotely, as this isn't something that comes naturally to most people. As a manager, however, you make sure you've developed a detailed, at least 2-week plan that consists of both one-to-one and small group meetings. And keep in mind, you may have to do a bit of hand-holding as fewer people will be readily available to assist. Make sure your onboarding plan has some clear milestones or goals and objectives that your new starter can work towards. That way, if there's any downtime in between calls or meetings, they know what they should be looking to do. These can be online trainings. It can be planning for their work after the onboarding period, or just simply completing all the required paperwork and systems access. However, the final point is onboarding doesn't only last for 2 weeks. This should be extended, I would say, while remote, and probably last through their probationary period or their first 3 months if you don't have a probationary period. HR, I would say, should check in with them at least 2 or 3 times, but managers should have weekly or fortnightly check-ins. And there should be plenty of opportunity for them to meet other team members. Something we have arranged internally at Talentful are virtual coffee breaks twice a month, where groups of 4 to 5 people globally are randomly put together to recreate a coffee break and just have a chit chat about anything for 30 minutes or less. This could be a way to, in turn, increase remote engagement. Now we're going to move on to the next topic and discuss how to embrace your company values in a post-COVID world. Since your values should be the things that every single employee lives and breathes on a daily basis, and those should ideally be what you project outwardly via your talent brand. I'm really excited to discuss this section because we're at such an interesting point in time right now where we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to completely hit the reset button and question almost everything about what we previously thought was the correct way to maintain a workplace and a company culture. I want to challenge everyone on this webinar right now not to fear this change, but embrace it. Don't be afraid of acknowledging that post-COVID, your company and its culture may not ever look the same again. Now take that opportunity to take a magnifying glass to your company values, which should be the building blocks of the company that give the people their purpose and are instrumental in developing your talent brand. Ask yourselves, what do your current values mean in a remote world, and are they still applicable? Can you live and breathe them whilst working remotely? If your answer is no, your values are not all still applicable, what can you do to implement to make sure your values are still being lived? Be open to the fact that you might need to consider refining or changing your company values altogether. and then build your remote culture off that. So then what's next? If you expect your entire company to live and breathe your values, why wouldn't you get everyone involved in deciding what they are? This could be also one method of re-engaging the team and making sure everyone buys into what you're selling. For example, at Talentful, we've previously broken the company down into 8 different groups, and throughout the course of the day, had separate open discussions with each group as to whether our current values continue to apply. If not, which ones should be removed and what should they be replaced with? We encouraged everyone to speak openly about what they felt fit with the current company and what did not, and then conducted a democratic process of voting values in or out. In the end, across all of our 8 groups, we ended up voting, well, 2 out of our 5 values got the chop, and through discussion and more voting, we voted in 2 new values instead. And then finally, what can you do then to embed your new values into your culture? I would say make sure there is time built into every team meeting, one-to-one or company all-hands meeting to apply those values. For managers, consider bringing them into your one-to-ones with each of your direct reports and ask them to do some work and bring examples of how they've lived and breathed your values, and consider building them into your progression planning. But don't make them do all of the work. Make sure you're also role modeling the relevant behaviors and using yourself as an example. If you're one of the leaders of the company or an HR professional, make sure you shine a spotlight on someone or people who truly exemplify one or more of these values, and share those stories in action with the wider team. Also think about, can you base any social events or activities around them? I bet the answer is yes, and I personally would love to hear more stories from my own HR networks about creative ways to continue to embed your company values on an ongoing basis. Because this must be both a top-down and a bottom-up approach to embed your values, especially when they're new. Otherwise, they just won't stick. And finally, make sure you publicize your values using whatever channels you have available, whether it's your company website, social media channels, or whatever. The more public you make it, the more you are ensuring that you are committing yourselves to representing these values and reminding your teams to be constantly championing those values. And this all ties back to getting your company noticed and clearly outlining what you stand for within your talent brand.
Thank you, Andy. I think it's really fantastic to have someone like Andy with us today, because we now have the opportunity to draw from his over 10 years of experience working with scaling businesses. So I thought it would be really great to pick his brain on how best to boost employee engagement when working remotely. So Andy, we all know that complete employee engagement is a notoriously difficult thing to achieve for just one person, let alone across the entire organization. So it's because we're all individual people with individual needs, expectations, and different motivations. So in your experience, what are some of the tangible things that we can do to help boost employee engagement during these remote times?
Yeah, thanks, Vida. That's a really great question and a really important topic right now. Of course, there's the more obvious solution to tackling engagement, which is actually something we've already done here at Talentful. And that's get input and feedback from your staff. I would say traditionally and more easily, that would be done with a feedback survey, asking people exactly what would engage them. And I would say build a survey and make sure everyone across all levels and departments inputs and adds open-ended comments and suggestions, and also break up the survey into relevant areas that you want to probe. For example, we asked internally about people's thoughts about returning to the office, about their feelings about internal diversity and inclusion as well, since that's a hot topic this year, and also about their mental health and well-being, as well as about relevant culture initiatives and socials that we should tweak or implement anew. And then finally, I would ensure that you do a thorough analysis to ensure that these relevant comments and suggestions are responded to and influence the overall engagement strategy and any action plans. Then present those summarized results back to the company so that you, again, commit yourself to positive change and so that people know they've been heard and responded to appropriately.
Thanks a lot, Andy. I think that was very interesting to how you made this all happen. Can we maybe talk about now a little bit about some of the less obvious solutions?
Yeah, definitely. I I think something that's a bit less obvious about engagement is that trust actually builds engagement. And both of these things are hugely indicative of a successful talent brand as well. I think employees who feel trusted are empowered to get their work done to the best of their ability. So then you might ask how you then create that sense of trust. And I've got a couple ideas around that. So I would say, yeah, first, give your employees autonomy. The employees in your organization are adults, and no one is purposely setting out to do a bad job. So in a remote environment, there's no need to micromanage anyone or force them to stick to an 8-hour workday and a 40-hour work week. Trust that they know what they need to achieve with managerial guidance and support, of course, and that they will get the job done, no matter what location they're working from. And I would say second, provide your employees with relevant challenges. Think outside the box as managers and give your employees new and challenging opportunities to do things they've never done before. Don't just stick to the status quo. Remember that the world has already changed dramatically. And so challenges can give employees growth opportunities and bring meaning to the work that they do, which in turn also breeds trust.
That's a really good point, actually. Thanks, Andy. Is there maybe anything else you'd suggest us doing to make sure employees still feel appreciated during these times? Are there any best practices around this?
Yeah, I would say a final point I would make is that showing appreciation is also vital during these tough times, and that can also further increase trust. I would say make sure that you show your employees appreciation for the hard work that they do, especially as many people this year have had to take on additional responsibilities in particular. And recognizing their accomplishments and contributions shows that you're paying attention to them and supporting them. And this will also help you build that sense of trust. And one point I would like to make is that different people feel appreciated in different ways. So it doesn't always need to be some grand gesture like a gift or even a company announcement. For some people, myself included, a simple but sincere, thank you for XYZ. Your work has made a huge impact to the team. From the manager can go a really long way towards positive employee engagement.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. So, I would say, we've got this on the slide here. You don't have to use all of these suggestions, but I hope at least one or two of these will spark some ideas for what you think will work best for your organization and its talent brand.
Absolutely, great. Thanks, Andy.
Great. So next, we wanted to show you all a recent video that our creative in-house studio put together to highlight our remote culture at Talentful. So in addition to being a super fun activity for your teams, video content like this is another great way of engaging your external audience and demonstrating the reality of your remote culture.
Morning everyone, how's it going?
Hey, guys, how you doing?
Taken up with this little monster here called Daisy.
I actually started learning Arabic. I've been running a lot more.
Actually, I got really into looking up, Mum, I want to call. Hi everybody. She's so creative.
Finally had a time to play some ukulele.
Tried to take up both French and Spanish, failed at both.
Oh, sorry guys, wrong Zoom call.
Managing to sort of stay positive and somewhat sane throughout the whole process.
For me was cutting my own hair.
Yeah, I learned how to cook. I didn't even know how to bake a potato.
Delivery.
I learned how to pick locks. Don't ask me why I learned that.
I had a virtual stag do.
Sorry, what was the question?
With my family because they're in another country.
Steph, so I work very closely with Steph anyway, in the sales team.
I've done around about 40,000 Zoom quizzes up to this point.
I've been playing a lot of Call of Duty with people from Talentful.
Definitely the people, just being able to socialize.
I think the snacks.
The social aspect, I think. Oh, thank you.
you.
Just miss interacting with people and going for lunch.
The really great internet connect.
I miss like the variety of people I get to talk to.
Just miss seeing everybody.
Bye guys. See you in the podcast.
Right, thanks guys. See you later.
Thanks for sharing that video, Kelly. My favorite bit is still the bit near the end with the frozen internet connection, because that's happened to me many times, and I'm sure many other people on this call as well. But yeah, if your company has the tech capabilities, I think this is a fantastic way to engage your teams remotely and again, help build that remote culture. So now I'm just going to quickly summarize our key takeaways from this session. So 1, when building your remote culture, remember that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You've probably got some great things in place already, and it just may require some conscious tweaking as the landscape of work has changed so significantly. 2, your pre-onboarding and onboarding processes count. Set your people up for success and make them feel included in the business even ahead of their first day of work. 3, don't be afraid to reinvent your values. Too often, company values are created at the time the company is founded and never looked at again. Take the opportunity now in this current climate to reshape them as needed. And finally, 4, work with your employees to make changes that have impact. It's notoriously difficult to maintain high levels of employee engagement, so make sure your people are included and can input into exactly how they are engaged.
Great, thanks, Andy. I think what the content we spoke about today will hopefully really help those on the webinar and can take some real good tactics away to help their own businesses. So as Vilo mentioned during our introduction, we're really excited at Talentful to have recently launched our talent branding service offering. So I just wanted to give you a brief introduction to our new service, and obviously if you're interested in finding out more, do check out our website. So we start projects off with data. So we partner with brand intelligence platform Attest, where we'll conduct an 8-week in-depth talent brand audit to learn what people are saying about you in the market, in the tech market and within your company. And at the end of this discovery phase, you'll receive a detailed report on what makes you stand out and where you can improve. Then we'll provide you with the next steps of what actions are needed to really achieve your ultimate goal to attract, engage, and hire top talent. And then finally, taking a data-led approach to creative, our in-house studio, who you've just seen put that remote video together as an example, builds really bespoke solutions that will help tell your story and highlight your unique culture, your values, and your vision. So these are just a host of activities that we specialize in, and we really believe that a combination of these products will activate our clients' brands and support them in spreading the word of their organization. So our experienced in-house creative studio comprises of a creative director, producer, and a social content executive. And to support with content creation, we also work with really professional journalists who have written for the likes of Wired, Forbes, and BuzzFeed, as well as top developers and designers. And we all work together to really bring our partners' brands to life.
Thanks, Kelly. And if there's anything you'd like to talk through or find out more information on, please check out our website. It's talentful.com. Our latest branding offering can also be found under services on our website. And finally, please do reach out to myself, Kelly, or Andy should you want to continue this conversation via email or LinkedIn. And I think that really concludes the webinar for today. So thank you all so much for listening. Hopefully you can come away from this session with a few ideas that you can implement within your own businesses. And I think it's now over to you guys. So let's have a look and see if there are any questions that came through today whilst we were on the webinar. Oh, great. I think there's a few interesting ones actually. Kelly, you might want to take the first, and here it goes. I really like the idea of surprise and delight. Do you have any specific examples of what companies have done around this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I spoke about some of this earlier on today. You know, I think what's really important is to make sure that you are taking your physical assets people will receive on day one and making sure that your new joiners receive those. But something when I actually worked at Adnan on the High Street, which was really great because obviously they work with independent companies on their website who kind of create various different products. But I got a great bespoke made chocolate in the post saying welcome to the team. And it seems, yeah, it's a really nice gesture. But it just made me feel really kind of special and thought about. I just think it's little things like that, like little surprises that can help your new starter feel valued right up front is really important. And I also think from a talent branding perspective, those are the sorts of things then people will organically go on to. And if they don't, maybe you can always ask them, why not take a photograph when you receive your gift and pop it on LinkedIn, or just encourage them to take to social and talk about their experience, because all of those instances will help with your talent brand and share the experiences that you make unique to every employee.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for sharing this. I think that was a really great example, and I'm just conscious about time, but I think we're probably going to have time for one more question, so bear with me for a second. Oh, and I think Andy, I think this might be for you. So the question goes: how do I gain buy-in from my CEO or senior leadership team in order to evolve our values in a remote world? Oh, that's a beefy one.
That is a beefy one, and also a really great question. I would say that it's really difficult to measure the specific commercial impact that a change in your company values is going to create. And more often than not, I would say CEOs in particular come from either a finance or a sales or an operational background, at least more so than from an HR background, for example. So they're going to be really interested in seeing the data and any numbers that you can provide them with. So a potential solution is, again, to survey your staff. Get them to answer questions about how connected they are to your current company values and find out how relevant each of them are. Ask them outright if the values should be changed. And if the answer is overwhelmingly yes, I would say don't be afraid to share that feedback with your CEO or the SMT, your senior management team. I mean, it's difficult to say no to something when the answer is put right in front of you. I would also say maybe consider gathering a few trusted stakeholders that you think have the CEO or the senior management team's ear, and get them to understand what needs to change. Because if they're in the meeting with you or can at least support your arguments to change up the values, it would become that much easier to persuade the SMT. And obviously, you should also make sure that you have a clear action plan already in place, as I would imagine the CEO's next question is going to be, well, what are the potential ramifications of this change, and what are the potential resources and costs involved, and how involved do I need to be? So, make sure to prepare your answers in advance to these questions and make sure they're reasonable and would make sense to your CEO.
Thanks a lot, Andy. I think they were really, really great suggestions as well. And again, as I said, I'm really conscious about time. So I think this really concludes our webinar for today. Thank you all so much for staying with us and listening. And again, if you would like to continue this conversation, please get in touch with myself, Kelly, and Andy via email or LinkedIn. Thank you so much, guys.